Hello everyone and welcome to another home stream. I'm Will for those of you who haven't joined us before, and today we're doing some pretty exciting stuff. We just wrapped up our Thanos month. Our big bad Thanos is coming out this Friday, not this next Friday. Last week was next Friday. This Friday. So I hope everyone's really excited to get their hands on Thanos and get him painted up. We got a lot of inspiration from our last streams. But today we are moving on and we are going to be painting Green Goblin. So I have a Green Goblin. He's going to be releasing, I believe, next month, along with the vaunted CP10 Spider-Man and Ghost Spider, or Miles Morales and Spider-Gwen, as some people want to call them. So next month is a big Spider-Verse kind of month for us. We're very excited to finally have these characters hitting the tables. We're going to be doing a whole lot more with them over the course of the month, but for the time being, we're going to start putting some paint on this Green Goblin. We're going to see how far we can get him today and probably finish him out next week. So that said, I'm going to get this camera off of me and onto the thing that you all came to actually see, which is Norman Osborn himself, our Green Goblin. Also very exciting today. Not only are we doing Spider-Verse characters this month, I'm also opening a new brush. That's right. Finally. This is like a rare White Elk moment. I almost never get new brushes. But my previous brush has been around for, I don't even know anymore, over a year now I've been using the same brush. So it was time to upgrade. It's time to switch out. So we're in new brush territory. So everything should be that much better, right? Alright. So here's our Green Goblin. You can see this guy looks really badass. Flying on his little glider. Throwing his pumpkin bombs, being all kinds of monstrous and evil. Let's get some light down here now that it's not on my face. Alright, so we're going to be going pretty traditional on this Green Goblin. And we're going to be using the purple and the green. We'll get the glider nice and done, so we're going to be good. For those asking how I take care of my brushes after each session, I literally just rinse them. I rinse them in water. I don't use any kind of brush soap or anything like that. And traditionally, I have very good luck with the brushes staying really good. The big trick is to just watch when you're painting to not have paint get inside the ferrule, which is the metal part that holds the bristles together. That'll make them split right away. And then, of course, you know, every brush is unique and different because it's a natural product if you're using natural hair brushes. So some hairs are going to be really good, some hairs are not going to be that great. So you have a range of time in which the brushes will work. I've had brushes that I've had to replace within 3 months. I've had brushes like this last one that lasted me over a year. So it really just comes down to kind of a bit of luck of the draw, and then obviously just maintaining like good brush habits. Clean your brush every once in a while. Don't let the paint dry on the bristles, even if it's not getting in the ferrule. All those things will definitely help out. Alright, so let's go ahead and grab our colors. We have a decision to make, so we can make it together. So there are two different color schemes for Green Goblin that are traditionally done. There's the more violet, which is the darker purple, and then there's kind of the more magenta-y purple. So we need to decide together, because I can't make up my mind, which purple we want to go with. Do we want to go with the more violet one, or do we want to go with the more magenta purple? And really, they're both used almost equally across Green Goblin. So magenta, I see one for magenta, and then I got one for... Alright, magenta seems to be winning, so we're going to go with the magenta purple. So this is Sunset Purple from Scale 75. It's a really nice kind of like bright magenta purple. We've used it before. We actually used this on Nebula a few weeks back. You'll see that I've zenithly primed our Green Goblin as usual. So this is going to allow me to use washes and stuff to kind of speed up the process and get some nice shading going on really quick. So I'm just going to take my purple, my Sunset Purple here, I'm going to thin it out with a little bit of glazed medium from and turn it more into a wash so that I can wash it over the areas, and I'll let that Zenith Prime do some of the work for me. So I'm just thinning out my purple until I get it to the consistency that I think I want, which is really Everyone always says like skim milk. That's like too thin in my opinion. I think we're going to go with this. I'm just going to give it a quick little test and see what we get to. Yeah, that looks about right. At least for pass number 1. So he's got kind of like the purple shorts going on. Everything else. I hope everyone's being safe. And everyone in the States had a great 4th of July holiday. Stayed safe and, you know, didn't lose any fingers or anything like that. Masks were appropriate. Was just careful. Don't want anybody getting sick or anything like that. And yeah, we had a good one. We barbecued meat and reflected on kind of the nature and start of our country. Some fun debates and discussions. Nobody lost any fingers. Of course, we're in the city, so we're not allowed to actually have like real explodey kind of fireworks anyway. So I made it better. But good times. So again, we're just going to kind of like layer this out. I'm trying to be careful. I don't want to get any purple, if I can help it, on the green skin sections, because that'll just make my stuff a little harder. In terms of using this wash technique, I'm not as worried about slopping over on his little handbag, his pumpkin bag as it were, because that I'm just going to paint using a base layer technique. I'm not going to use the wash technique from the Zenith Prime, so I can be a little sloppier there. You see I got a little purple on his knee, so I'm just going to take my wet brush. I'm just going to erase that. And this is what's great about always having another brush handy that's clean, is you can use it really effectively to erase your paint mistakes, because we all make mistakes. And that's okay, because mistakes can be corrected. Obviously erasing it is going to be the quickest and the fastest way to address it. But, you know, you can always do more paint too. That's always a possibility. The shorts going on. Yeah, even though I don't think I've ever lived anywhere where fireworks were not, you know, shot off despite kind of the protestations or the statements of the city itself. So it's a good time. Get his fancy boots going on, his purple boots. Obviously, you know, talking about the miniature choices itself. The Green Goblin we went with is definitely evokes that classic, that more classic Green Goblin feel. There's been a few versions where they kind of riffed off the armor from some of the movies, where it's less like goblin green skin and more like a mechanical suit. We explored a lot of different options for Mr. Osborne here, but in the end we really wanted to evoke that more classic feel, but make sure they had some contemporary, you know, nuances and kind of things. The biggest challenge we had, honestly, was determining what glider we were going to use. Because I don't know how closely anybody out there has really looked at all of the different gliders that Mr. Goblin here has used over his illustrious career as a villain. But there are a lot of them. And one of the stories that I think was kind of funny as we went through it was, you kind of forget where your brain kind of amalgamates all of these different styles together, and you just kind of remember things the way that you remember them, even if they're accurate or not. And this is kind of human memory in general, but when it came to the glider for Green Goblin, it was like, oh yeah, we want to do that classic one. And then Dallas would draw the classic one, and we'd be like, that's like way too small, Dallas. What are you doing? That's not big enough. He'd be like, you said the classic one. We'd be like, yeah, but I mean, it's bigger than that. He'd be like, no, it's definitely not bigger than that. We'd be like, you're crazy. And then you'd go pull up some reference of like the classic Goblin glider, and it is. It's just, it was tiny. So, not quite as intimidating as you remember in your mind. At least not what we were looking for. So we went back and forth quite a few times on glider designs and what we were looking for, and then how was he going to interact with the glider. Because we always knew we wanted him on the glider, but that of course raised questions of, well, how are you going to get him to fly? Because, the beauty of drawing an illustration or doing a painting is that there aren't any laws of physics that you have to obey. But once you start working on miniatures in 3 dimensions in physical reality, there's all of a sudden all these pesky rules like gravity and things that you have to start taking into account. So we quickly, of course, lit on the idea of using the smoke from his glider, which of course is not an original idea. I don't want to claim that we invented sliced bread here, but that quickly became kind of our primary method for getting him off the ground and getting that really nice posing that we wanted. So that he would be flying on his glider like we all wanted, not on the ground. And we could start to play with that really crazy kind of menace that is the Green Goblin. Because now representing that unstable nature, that crazed goblin personality was a big part of what we were trying to do, both in the rules and in the miniature itself. Another thing that we went back and forth on, I think about 5 times, was the size of his eyes. We would always get to a point and we'd review the print, and it was like, it doesn't quite look right. Like, the eyes need to be bigger. They need to be more menacing, more wild, more manic. And so it was just a fun back and forth to try to capture the flavor of this guy as best as possible. And it definitely did take a few tries to get right. It was a fun journey. And it was definitely a learning experience because we were working on this guy really early, kind of the life of the studio and stuff. And he was technically challenging from an engineering standpoint, obviously. From a sculpting standpoint, trying to get that pumpkin bomb throw to look natural, because we wanted him actually launching the pumpkin bomb. But of course, again, you have to worry about things like physics. Pumpkin bomb isn't just going to float there, so how do you attach it and still make it look like it's been thrown? The process of being released from his hands. And just a lot of little challenges and puzzles that the engineering team in Dallas and the sculptor got to solve together. And I'm really happy how everything turned out and where it came up. I'm very excited for Josh to post his panel to play so people can get their first taste of the rules. Kind of where we went with this guy. He was much like the miniature itself, he went through several design iterations as we tried to figure out how best to kind of get the idea that we wanted. And the initial design that we started with, that I drew up, was kind of quickly tossed out because it was just too complex and weird. It required multiple different cards and all this stuff, and ultimately the game that we want to make and that we're really always focused on for Crisis Protocol is that it's fast and streamlined and very narrative and fun, and there's not a lot of bookkeeping. And so Mr. Pagani rightly looked at me with his skeptical face, and we talked about it a little bit, and I went, okay, fine. And then he kind of sat, because we moved on to a couple other things for a little bit, and I came back to him a little later, and that's sometimes your brain just needs time to stew on things. Sometimes you just need to think about stuff, and we'd done a lot with the game by that point, and it just kind of clicked, like, oh, what if we did it like this? And it kind of became a really interesting template. And for folks that are big fans of radical differences from healthy to injured, I think Green Goblin's going to be your boy. But definitely a fun character all around to try to envision, and such an iconic and classic one too. That very important that we got him right, and that we did the character justice, like all the characters. But we knew that also as kind of the cornerstone of our Spider villains affiliation, he had to be really compelling and interesting and fun, and really live up to it. Okay, so I think that's where the purple is. The most difficult to design so far, I mean, outside of Thanos, who had his own kind of challenges, because he had the Ultimate Encounter mode and because he had the Infinity Gems and all of that stuff, there's a lot of moving parts on Thanos. But I think, basic character, most difficult to design so far, that at least has been released, it was definitely Goblin, in my estimation. Up until Goblin, not counting Thanos and the multiple iterations for him, we never really had to go back completely to the drawing board on any characters. It was always balance tweaks and, updates and kind of like small dial turns or adjustments that we made across the entire game to make things consistent and things. But Goblin was one of the very first one, not the only one at this point, unfortunately. But was the very first one where, that concept that was originally pitched just didn't work and got completely tossed out. I haven't really started work on Sentry, but I'm sure he'll be challenging too. Okay, so I think I'm pretty happy with that purple. I'm just going to let it dry. I can always go back and I'll probably hit it with a purple ink wash just to kind of deepen the colors. But you can already see how we're getting really good results really quickly thanks to that Zenith Prime. We have our highs and our lows. Everything's going on. So we're going to move on, and I think we're going to knock out this glider really quick. So I'm going to start with a base coat of black metal, just to give a nice solid foundation to work up from. And we'll kind of build up from there. So, going on. All right. Well, we're just painting some steel here, so obviously I'm just going with the classic base coating method and laying out these colors. So what else can we talk about? I think one of the other cool things about, especially next month, is kind of how these new affiliations that come out synergize and kind of complete some plans that we had when we initially did the core set, because obviously two of the characters from the core set, Dr. Octopus and Spider-Man, Peter Parker, don't fit into the affiliations that come in those boxes, and that was intentional. And it was obviously something that we kind of built around and knew that when those affiliations that actually featured them or were more centralized to them came out, we would get to build off of that stuff. So there certainly are things that I think people are going to find they're going to be fun to explore, some new life, some different ways to view those characters than maybe people have so far in terms of where they fit and what they do. Because there are some windows that open up when, looking at a character in an affiliation versus outside of an affiliation. Obviously, the goal with everything is to make these characters as compelling and fun as possible, no matter how you take them, because again, one of the primary design goals and philosophies we have for Crisis Protocol is that we want people to be able to take their Marvel Dream Team. We want people to be able to take any characters that they love and create something that is fun and viable within the game and that can be played and feel enjoyable, right? You should never feel punished for doing what you want. But of course, there are always, as in any game that involves strategy and tactics, there are going to be those optimal options. There are going to be better choices and less better choices if you're looking for the pure mathematical number crunch answer, right? That is a bit where the dice come in the game, though, as we've talked about in previous videos and stuff. The dice are designed to be the way they are to mitigate a decent amount of that min-maxing syndrome, right? You can try to have everything go your way by just crunching numbers and choosing cards and all this stuff, but at the end of the day, luck and dice rolling is going to play a large part of that, and that's what makes cool story moments. That's what makes the game, I think, fun and exciting, is that you just never quite know. There's never a guarantee. That Black Widow could roll her pants off and KO a Thor just as much as Thor could roll up on that Black Widow and completely whiff it. And that's the goal. The goal is that there's player agency and choice at all times, but there's a bit more than just choice going on. And that randomness, that insane luck factor is part of the overall game design and in some ways part of the balance. I would say the fun balance, not so much the character balance, but it's always something we consider. Favorite underrated team tactic cards? I got to think about what's actually out. I think one of the ones that I find to be, well, obviously I like the ones that are a bit more zany. So I was a big fan. I'm a big fan of Rocket Boots just for the lulz. I think Gamma Launch obviously is super fun, although I know it's hard because I feel like all the ones where I was like, oh, these are just great funny moments, like having Hulk literally long bomb a Spider-Man across a map. To me, those are fun because they're so narrative and just hilarious, but they've also found their place in many different lists and builds, and I think that's super awesome. I don't see a lot of people taking the one that comes, I can't remember the name of it, and I don't want to say a name of a card that doesn't exist yet, but will. Tactical repositioning, I think, tactical readout. The one that comes in the Vision Winter Soldier box that allows a character to move short. I really like those out of movement tactic cards. I think they have really strong value in the game. They're not the flashiest, and they're not always useful. It kind of depends on the scenario or the mission and what you're trying to do. But I find those to be really good. So, and Sibling Rivalry obviously is another one that's amazing. So. Without any reason, it was my favorite released character to play. I mean Doc Ock, for sure. Um, One, because like thematically, it just makes the most absolute sense. But two, obviously, without going into rule specifics, those two have some really fun kind of synergistics together, and they play the way you want. And I agree. I think the people who don't like, I mean, Doc Ock and Crossbones are two go-tos in a lot of my rosters still. I think both, do some amazing stuff. But again, they may not be the most optimal choice. However, I just love what they do. I love the unpredictability of Ock. I love when you get that super amazing roll and you get all your wilds. The way that feels and the story that it tells, I think, is amazing. And on the flip side, I love the one-dimensionality of Crossbones. Like, it's just fun to me to be like, he's coming across the table and he's just going to take hit after hit after hit. But when he gets to you, it's going to be a bad day. Like, no one's going to be happy except for Crossbones when he finally gets to you. And living that dream of like 2 8-dice strikes, in an activation is just phenomenal. Even though, I have to be honest with you, I think literally every time I've ever lived the Crossbones dream of 2 Haymaker strikes, I have never done more than like 2 damage with it because my dice always flub. And that just makes it better because I'm like, ugh, you finally get there. It's the games in which I don't get to live the dream that Crossbones just kills. I'm like, why can't you have these rolls when I'm rolling 8 dice instead of 5 dice, Crossbones? But yeah, Green Goblin, Doc Ock, that pair for me is super, super fun, super legit. I love it. It's fantastic. Yeah, and I think, kind of talking about the other flip side of character design and game design, the game isn't, even if you can really crunch all the numbers and all the cards and stuff, there's still that story, the narrative-driven element stops it from just being like, I'm just going to kill every single one of your characters over the course of this game, and you're never really going to have a chance to do anything right. We really wanted to make sure that every hero felt like a hero and the game experiences felt like a comic. So, heroes do get KO'd, they get knocked out. It's going to happen. That's literally part of the mechanics. But it's important that a strategy built purely around knocking out other heroes isn't really all that viable. It can be done. I don't think it's super successful, but it can be done. So, like, the story, the narrative elements, the fact that you only win really with 16 victory points, or the most victory points at the end, changes the equation a lot. And of course, hopefully come September and even through the Ultimate Encounters and stuff that we've done, there's also always this fun kind of, our mentality is we want to make the game with as many modes as possible, with as many expressions as possible. It's not, to us, it's not about a question of matched play, if you will, that one-on-one classic game mode being the end-all be-all of the game experience. The game is so many other things. It's so many different iterations and modes between Ultimate Encounters and the 1v-many kind of system to what we're doing with organized play and what people will hopefully start to get to see here towards the fall as things begin to, ideally open up and we swing back to organized play. The Vibranium heist, that has been long, unfortunately delayed due to the current global situation, but asymmetric narrative-driven scenarios that introduce brand new versions of characters that exist specifically designed for those events and whole new ways to experience the game and to think about roster and squad construction and all that. I'm really excited for people to see and to get to participate in what we have planned for Digital Gen Con that's coming up, in our online event campaign thing that we'll be doing there, and we're going to be talking more about, just to give a little bit of spoilers that Josh is probably losing his mind over. There's, it's a hobby and it's a game, and you should take it that way. Not everyone wants to play the game the same way, and that's great. That's part of the social contracting, but it's our goal to always make sure that you get those options and those opportunities, that no matter what we're giving or creating, what we're maintaining is the core of what we set out to do, which is to create a game experience that brings people together in fun social interactions that tell stories, and that evoke the feel of the Marvel Universe. Because at the end of the day, there are some people who will be like, well, I remember all of my victories and my losses. But I think most people, even the folks who count, the win-loss ratios that they have, what you really remember the most are those hilarious stories where you had one last-ditch effort to try to pull a win out, and you did it. Or everything was stacked your way and you rolled, and all of a sudden it was just like, well, that didn't work as planned. And you have a laugh and you smile and you tell these communal stories together. That's what matters. That's why we're here. We're here to be creators, and we're here to create together. Collaboration is the greatest tool of creativity. So I can tell my own stories, with myself, but those stories are so more robust and so much more memorable when I'm telling them with other people. I kind of skipped ahead here. So for those playing at home, I used Greenskin Flesh from the Fantasy and Game Scale 75 range to do the skin on Green Goblin, or at least lay down my first coat. So this guy's coming along real fast and real nice. Getting pretty good here. I'm getting philosophical in game design here. There are other events for those asking in the chat for Gen Con. We're currently going online Gen Con is kind of a new thing for everyone, so there's been a lot of trial and error and learning as we go on all sides. But yes, we have a whole bunch of things planned. We have painting classes from Dallas, our own magnificent Dallas Kemp. Will Pagani and I will be doing a couple of live development kind of game philosophy panels. We have a game. Obviously, we have the big game event that I was kind of talking about a little bit. So there'll be some pretty cool stuff going on, and that's going to be true over all the Asmodee studios. So if you like what some of our brother and sister studios do, they're going to have some really cool content for you too. So it should be a really good weekend. It should be a really good time, even if we're all staying safe and secure and doing it from kind of our home offices or wherever that may be. But yeah, it's definitely it's the first of a new generation, a new breed, if you will. So everybody's still kind of figuring it out and getting going. But there will be more events posted up soon with time slots and stuff for the painting and all of that. Also next week, for those guys and gals and other people, whatever your preferred pronoun happens to be, we will be announcing the latest staff picks for our hashtag Painting Protocol Painting Challenge, which is really exciting. We got some amazing stuff on textures. I got to do the tough job of finalizing my picks after I'm done with the stream here, so those will be coming as well. And I believe that Dallas already announced our next challenge for this month, the month of July, which is just Show us your Black Order character. So character, just Thanos, Black Dwarf, Ebony Maw, Corvus Glaive, Proxima Midnight. Show us what you did. We've seen so many amazing paint jobs on these characters so far. We really just wanted to give people a chance to, again, show them off, and then give us a chance to kind of pick some favorites, and really just kind of like, woo! Alright, so I think I'm going to move on, and we're going to knock out that pouch really quick. So I'm going to use African Shadow, which is kind of a purple brown from the scale color, because I want to tie my browns into that purple cloth. So by using some similar hues, I can really tie the overall look of the mini together and the paint job and stuff. So you'll be able to see here. Show you really quick. So there's my African Shadow, so you can see how it's got a nice little purple desaturated brown to it, and then I'll use some washes and stuff to kind of build that up and make it even nicer. But yeah, I love seeing everybody talking about their favorite moments in games that they've played and stuff. Like that's really the goal, right? I think to me, in general, and I know to most of the folks at Atomic Mass, the philosophy is like the game itself is just a vehicle for creating memorable social interaction, fun social interaction with other people, right? It's great to think about and to challenge yourself and to grow skills. We talk about painting as a skill. Well, playing games is a skill too. Nobody starts out playing a game with it all figured out, right? It's something you grow into, and you discover your own ways and you grow at your own pace, Some people love to really challenge themselves and stretch themselves and go the quote-unquote competitive route, and the way in which they kind of flex their muscles and grow in their skill base is to challenge others and themselves to do better, and they count the win-loss as part of it. That's just as viable as somebody who wants to come in and simply, grow their skills by just learning the game better, not having to reference the rule book as much, so that they can not take time away from the quality time spent with the person across the table from them as they create and tell these games. I think everybody likes to win, right? Victory is a sweet sensation, but the definition and the importance you place on winning can be very different. I've met plenty of competitive-minded folks over the years who, even though they wanted to win, were still so focused on, the great experience of creating a social, memorable moment with the person across the table. It wasn't about necessarily beating you. It was about, seeing whose skill had grown and what they could learn from their opponent and all of this stuff. And I think that's healthy competition, right? And that's perfectly fine to foster. But like everything, the way people want to experience and play is going to be very different. And it's going to fluctuate. And again, the goal with, what we do as a studio is to focus on the game experience itself and let people figure out what they want to do. Now, our bent is always going to be narrative. It's always going to be more of that casual story focus. But as I've stated before, just because casual, you say a game's casual, it gets a bad rap. Everybody assumes, cynically, that if somebody says, well, this game is meant to be played casually, it's a cop-out for making really tight and good rules and having game balance, because if something isn't done well, you just don't use it that way. It's a casual game. My argument has always been, and our stance as a studio is, the best casual games are the ones that have the tightest rule sets. Because a casual player isn't going to want to go through all of the mental hoops and the gymnastics you might need to interpret a poorly written rule, or to interpret a situation that may not work out, or even to identify something that, if you put the two things together, you create this experience that's going to be very negative and broken, quote unquote, in the game. That's not a casual game, right? So the casual game, to make a great casual game and to have players who want to be casual have the best experience with it, they have to have the best, the tightest rules. They need to be clear, they need to be concise, things need to be balanced. Because I think the casual player, we're all casual because we all just want to have fun. And that's what casual really means. It means I just want to hop into this game and I want to have a good time. I want my superheroes to throw these cars at each other, and I don't want to have to go back to the rule book 20 times. I don't want to have to debate how this car goes. Like, these are the things that make a great casual game. So just to be clear, when I advocate and I say, Crisis Protocol is designed to be a casual game for everybody to enjoy. By nature of being a casual game, it also means that the people who want to take it to that next step, that want to be competitive and compete and all of that, they can totally do that. And, ideally, if we've done our job right at making the game a great casual game, they're going to have a really easy time playing it the way they want as well. Because we'll have done all the hard work for them so that the vast majority of folks who, just come in and they play to have fun and to tell stories and all of that stuff, and they're not necessarily worried about exercising or flexing their tactical skills to be the best of the best, they're going to be able to have a great time, and they're not going to have any questions, and they're going to be able to lose themselves in the story that's unfolding on the table as they tell it with the other person through what they do in the game. I think, somebody mentioned like ban lists and stuff. That's definitely kind of more of a concern for the competitive-minded players. And it really will just come down to, I never want to say never to anything. Because you just never know, right? I think, the goal is to make everything balanced and fair and great right out of the gate. Sometimes things happen, right? We don't know what the future is going to hold. And, we've done all of the due diligence we can to make sure that things work and will always work. Things are ever evolving. And to close a door on something just because it might be not the best, right? Or to close the door to solutions that may make the overall game experience better even if they cause short-term pain, to me is never the smartest, right? Explore every avenue, leave every avenue open to you, and then evaluate based on what is going to get you the best result. And I think for everyone will agree, the best result is the most fun game you can possibly have, right? The greatest game experience that can be had. And if that takes some kind of system like a ban thing or whatever, you evaluate that. I think to me the important thing is there's a lot of moving parts in Crisis Protocol, and the one thing that I would never do, unless it was an absolute, just catastrophe of experience, would be to, ever say this character can no longer be played, right? Because everybody's putting their time, their energy, and their effort into these characters through hobbying and painting, and we all have our favorites and stuff, and that to me is like, ooh, it just, no way. But again, I never want to be 100% on anything, because the reality is that the world is ever changing and situations are ever changing, and the only constant is to make sure that everything we do is making the most enjoyable, the funnest, and the healthiest game experience that we can for all people involved, right? So that's kind of the way, right? I think, I think we all share the desire to make sure that everything is viable all the time, but you just never know. And I'll be the first to admit, like I have before, mistakes can be made, they are made. All you can do is learn from them and do your best to address them as they happen. And be as transparent as possible if they do. And hopefully, through these streams and through our kind of social media and the way we post news and stuff, you guys can see that we don't claim to be perfect. We claim to be passionate and to be really committed to doing everything we can to make sure that everything that we do meets a quality standard that is great and that will make everybody happy. But we're not 100% successful all the time. It sucks when that happens, but we take it as a learning experience and we come back and we do better. And that is just called the unlimited potential of life. Alright, so we got that first layer of orange down. The pumpkin bombs, those are really popping. Face going on. I think I'm going to move on and we're going to, what do I want to do next? I think I'm going to use a little bit of purple wash and we're going to shake down this purple. So I'm going to take some violet. I'm going to take some violet Inkintensity right here. And I'm just going to create a little wash, or a glaze, I guess I should really call it. Kind of going to be in between. I don't quite want this to be just a glaze because I do want it to help with the shading in the crevices, but I also want to just kind of tint everything a little bit more towards the purple side. So it's a little bit of both. We're trying to have our cake and eat it too a little bit here. I just want to, we've got so many nice micro folds and cloth folds and stuff, I just really want to like accentuate that and pick it up. But I don't want to tint the color so much that I lose that magenta and turn it into a purple. So hopefully you'll kind of see what we're aiming for here as we get into those crevices. So you can see how that violet ink is kind of really accentuating out our crevices. And it's working more like a wash, but we're also, of course, naturally tinting our purple a little bit to pull it back from that pinker magenta side. Because obviously, if you take a magenta or a purple or any color and you start adding white to it, but especially a color that has a lot of red in it, you're going to start to move towards that pink zone if you add white. And because we stretched our sunset purple over a zenith prime that has a lot of white in it, as it stretches, it's going to naturally turn more to that pink side. And I want to pull it away from that pink, and I want to bring it back more towards a purple side. So using this kind of glaze, this glaze slash wash, because I'm letting it pool a lot more than I would a glaze. Should we call it a waze? I don't know. There's probably a term for it. Dallas is probably screaming it in the chat right now and I'm not looking. To kind of just tone back the pinks and bring it back more towards that purple side while keeping that more magenta-y brightness. A lot of this is just playing and experimenting and aiming for a result, not knowing if I'll get it, but being okay with kind of the experiment. I'm using very, very thin layers. I don't want this to pool heavily, and I don't want it to be heavy-handed. I'm not slopping this on. It's just like laying down a very thin layer of cellophane. Looks like we'll be able to finish this out, and then we'll have to finish the rest of this guy next week. And that's another thing, I see people talking about some events and stuff they ran. All of our official OP events not only are, more narrative focused, right? But we're really play focused, as we call it, with our organized play and our approach to events, and that everybody should walk away with all the cool stuff. You don't get the cool stuff for winning, right? Because there's only one winner. And the fact is that winner wouldn't have gotten the win if there weren't anybody else there to play with. So just playing the game is what you should get rewarded for. Not just through the enjoyment of playing, but also through getting all the cool stuff. So everything that we do organized play-wise, all of the rewards are just earned by the simple act of playing. You shouldn't go to an event that's like an official kit from us and not walk away with all the cool stuff that was in that kit, which includes new game content in terms of like the narrative scenarios. So one of the cool things about Vibranium Heist, as we've talked about a little bit before it got pushed back, is that it introduces an entirely new mission to the game. It's an asymmetrical mission, so it's kind of a new way to play Crisis Protocol in a different way with your friends. So you get to walk away with all that cool content that just, expands the ways that you can experience and enjoy the game itself. And then, of course, you get some pretty sweet alternate art prizes or tokens, depending on the kit that you're talking about. And the way that you earn those is, just through playing games like you would have anyway. So everything comes back to, we just want to have fun with the game. We want to play, let people enjoy it the way they want. But for us, that's what matters. That's, at the end of the day, that's what we're all here for. To play games together. Tell those stories together. To enjoy each other. Just going to get through and make sure that I don't have any excessive pooling here. Alright, but now we can see how, just with the act of that one layer of glaze, he's a bit shiny as it dries out, but you can see how that purple really changed. So we still have that very classic magenta purple, but we've toned it back from a pink, and now it feels a lot more like the purple. So we're getting closer to that classic Green Goblin look. And this is another kind of like quick trick in terms of just paints, but always trust the fact that when you're using glazes and inks and stuff, or washes of any type, they're going to make the miniature shinier, because even if you're using a matte medium, that medium still has a sheen. So don't fret when you're like, oh my gosh, he's so shiny. That's why you should hit it with a matte medium or a dull coat, like a matte sealant. Always hit it with a matte sealant. That'll bring that sheen down, and it'll really let all of those details pop on the miniature itself. But I think this is where we have to stop, because I'm hitting the 2 o'clock mark and Josh is very stringent on his timelines. But overall, super excited with the progress that we made on this guy. He is almost tabletop ready in my opinion. Like, all I'd really want to do is add a little glow to the eyes, finish out the smoke in the base, and get my pumpkin flare going on, and I would call this guy ready for the table. So we got that going on. We'll be back next week to finish him out. Thank you so much, guys, for hanging out with me and chatting. Be sure to head on over to the paint stream on Thursday at 1 p.m. Pacific, where Dallas will be painting, I think he's going to be painting Miles Morales, so our new Spider-Man, leader of the Web Warriors. I'll be in the chat as well, hanging out. Just chat and talk shop with anybody who wants to. Otherwise, guys, stay safe, be good to each other, and we will see you on the next one. Cheers, guys.